And now, coming to you live from the City of Angels, Los Angeles, California, it's the Sheena Metal Experience with your host, Sheena Metal, only on KGRA Digital Broadcasting.
Hi, and welcome to the Sheena Metal Experience on KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We're here every Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. And I'm Sheena Metal. I'm a psychic medium. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a 27-year talk radio host coming to you live every week from Los Angeles, California. This show is about humanity. It's about spirituality. It's about creativity. It's about passion. It's about being your best you and inspiring others to do the same in this big, beautiful world. And it may be my show, friends, but always, every week, it's your experience. My guest today is a wonderfully talented actress, writer, producer, teacher, activist, advocate. I said activist, but I know she likes advocate better. Animal lover and communicator. You know her best for her role as Cindy Brady on the iconic and wonderful Brady Bunch. But the truth is, she may have been Cindy, but she always wanted to be Rhoda Penmark from the Bad Seed. Please welcome to the show, my beautiful and wonderful friend Susan Olsen is here. Hello, my friend. And radio host, I forgot that.
Oh,
You have so many hats. I forgot that one.
I know.
It's so good to have you here, isn't it? I love that.
It's good to be had.
I love that you secretly always wanted to be Rhoda Penmark. I think that's you wanted to play the serial killers and the bad girls.
Yes.
And instead you had that sweet little, Aryan face. So you always had to play the girl next door.
More like I look like I belonged in Village of the Damned, but that's what I liked to think. The squeaky, clean, sweet thing just wasn't really me. And only my mommy and I knew that I was secretly trying to look like Rhoda Penmark when they finally let me get my hair out of the horns of plenty on either side of my head and wear braids. They were fashioned after Rhoda's, although because of that darn song, they insisted that the ends of the braids be curled.
All right.
And my bangs be curled. So, I have straight hair though. But
yeah, you and me both. I got to put cement in mine to get it to do anything. And by the end of the show, it will all have fallen out anyhow.
I've actually gotten a little bit of wave, though, since I turned 60. I mean, it's like in the last few months.
Yeah, I've gotten it since menopause. This is a show about menopause today. But they say your hair changes after menopause. And for me, I got curls. So when I wash it now, the bottoms are really like ringlets, I was always fascinated with that as a child and never had it. I always wanted to have that Irish hair like the girl from Brave. I mean, I know that's about Scotland, but that kind of Celty hair that was red and huge. And instead I got, 4.5 hairs and they're brown. But I do like that ringlet-y stuff. I want to start by talking about a weird spiritual thing because I believe there are no accidents.
Okay.
And I think that
same here.
Sometimes we see someone somewhere in person, on television, whatever the story is, and we feel an attraction to them. Now, sometimes it's just fandom, but sometimes there's a reason for it. And, case in point, right? My mom always thought I should marry Johnny Whitaker. And then I grew up and dated him for a while. I didn't seek him out. He just kind of fell in my lap and it just kind of happened. So when I was little, I don't think I've ever told you this. When I was little, I was the youngest of all the cousins on my mom's side. And the closest cousin to me, I think she's 6 or 7 years older than me. I, as a child, thought she looked like you. And I was fascinated by her. Now, the weird thing is, as you know, I was not a Brady head. I'm a Partridge Family girl. I'm sorry about that. I love you, but I'm sorry.
Too.
I was not fascinated with you as an actress. Just every time I saw her, I was fascinated with her because I thought she looked like you. And she and I just recently connected on Facebook. And I think about a month ago, I finally actually told her that story saying like, hey, did anybody ever tell you this when you were a kid? Because wow, So the weird thing is I think I was fascinated by that in her because I knew someday I would meet you
Hmm.
and we would be friends, because I think you have your soul pod when you're at home, right? The souls you hang out with when you're not here. And I think that you recognize them when you see them in each
Yeah.
incarnation. And I think that's such a strange story. I don't even know if I've ever told you that story. But
No, you haven't. I'm kind of shocked.
there's a story I've never told you. It's a
Yeah.
miracle. But yeah, isn't that an interesting thing? And it's
Yeah.
now I think sometimes you see people that maybe you knew in another life and you are fascinated and fanned out by them. But with me, I was only fascinated by her in the fact that she looked like you. I wasn't, running to Tiger Beat and cutting out pictures of you every week. But I think the familiarity in that made me think of you, and then I would meet you, and then that happened. Isn't that kind of an interesting thing, right?
That I completely agree with that. My life has been a series of getting a certain feeling about somebody, and later on I find out I'm working with them. I know
Yeah.
them. At my first husband, I recall thinking, what is this? Why do I have the feeling that I remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm meeting him, or not that I've just gotten to know him. And it was almost like it was predestined that I was going to make the mistake of marrying him. Uh, and I was in the process of getting to know him. And I
Yeah.
kind of knew that he was going to be my first husband. And it's like, it's so weird that I'm getting to know him sort of after the fact, after I've already made up my mind. And gee, it's kind of nice. I like him, you know.
Yeah,
So
isn't that
yeah.
interesting? I have a friend that I met through the nonprofit world, and we met through a mutual friend who was doing a charity event in Palm Springs and had him come and do my show. And it was an instant click, and that's not abnormal for me to feel that with somebody on the show. But he said, "You have to come to Palm Springs." And I was planning to go. So I went to Palm Springs and I went to this kind of like pre party the night before the event, and he was there, and everybody wanted to talk to him because his charity is huge, and it was the benefactor of the event. And we kept finding little corners to talk. And then he said to me then we went to the event, this big semi-formal event, and he said, "I never take pictures with people, but I want to take a picture of you." So we took this picture together, and it looks like we've known each other forever. And he is, very out gay. So obviously we're not together. But people would look at the picture and say, "Oh, is that your husband?" Or I posted on Facebook.
Wow.
And I really believe that probably in another time that he was my husband,
Yeah.
whatever gender either of us were, or my wife, or whatever the story was. But there was that instant connection. And it was definitely like a life partner kind of connection. And
Hmm.
I hardly ever talk to him because he's traveling the world and I'm busy all the time. But whenever I do touch base with him, it's like that again. It's like running into your ex-husband in the like that Dan Fogelberg song about old Lang Syne, right? Like we're in the grocery store and I bumped into him.
That's
It's I think it's wonderful because I think tribe is such an important thing to me, as you know. And I think that it reminds us that there is another place where we have a tribe, right? And
Mhm.
that we are connected to people. And there is a connection that is deeper than I have to know you because you're biologically related to me, or I have to talk to you because we sit next to each other at work, or we have to be friends because our friends are also friends. No, we just actually generally have a connection. And
Mhm.
that's an important thing. I think
Yeah.
it keeps us here, right? It's what I think tribe is what pulls us through a lot of the tougher things in life. And I certainly think both of you and I growing up in the entertainment business, your friends, your tribe are what get you through all the craziness and the unhappiness
Oh
that
yeah.
business can bring,
And
you
I've
know?
got such a great tribe. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost better than being a Beatle, although there isn't a song catalog.
No.
But
And you don't have to run from fans, which is good and bad.
we did for a little while
That's
there. We
right.
actually did. It was like Brady Mania, and
Yeah.
we were followed. Our driver had to drive really fast, but yeah, that it like I say, I mean, I've got this great tribe, and we're still. I was just on the phone with Barry yesterday.
Yeah.
There could be something in the works. I don't want to jinx it, but
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
that would be very nice. I mean, it's the most unusual relationship, and the only thing I can relate it to is like being in a band that doesn't go away. Uh, and as a child, I completely believed in magical thinking, and I wanted to be a Beatle, except for the part where people chase after you.
Right.
But
Right.
and I mean, we even went on our little musical tours, but with that, we put the ick in music.
But I think Barry would disagree with that. And I think that Barry Williams was the one who first told me that you guys got chased, and when he did my show. And I think when he told me that, I don't think he was upset. I think he kind of thought that was fun.
Oh no, he loved it.
I think a lot of people would have been horrified by it, but I think he was generally thought it was kind of a fun and funky thing. I sort of liken it to.
He's always embraced fame.
All of you, I sort of liken it to, my mom was adopted. All her siblings were adopted because my grandmother couldn't have kids. So they were adopted, but then they all went to separate summer camps. They all went to separate boarding schools. They all went to separate colleges. So they had this bond in that they sort of grew up together, but they weren't biologically related and didn't spend all their time together. And when I see you with Barry and with Mike and with Eve, and I that's what I kind of think of with Chris and with Maureen. You guys are sort of like adopted siblings that didn't really grow up together.
Yes. And we didn't have to share one bathroom. So that was very nice.
Yeah, that is nice. Yes.
And it's kind of weird sometimes, though, because you don't have that blood thing. So, like I'm very close to my sister, as you know, and there's just things that we share. We even sound alike on the phone, and that's the genetic thing. And then it will be a little strange with the Brady siblings because we were raised differently.
Right. Yeah.
And we're genetically different. And, I'll find myself kind of scratching my head going, how does Chris see it that way? Because I think of him as my brother. And yet, no, Susan, he's not really your brother. So it's very strange, but I don't really know anything differently because I only had 7 years of life before I was with these people.
Right. But is it not really? I mean, what really makes a sibling? I mean, I don't have any siblings, so I don't have anyone to like actually be biologically related to, or even anybody but my mom that I was ever biologically related to.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if somebody feels like your sibling, I mean, I consider you my sibling. I consider my best friend since I was 14 my sibling, and her daughter my niece. I don't really know any different, and I don't think it matters. I think sibling is sort of it can be something that just is like biology or adoption, or it can be something that is in your heart, and it just sort of is a spiritual sibling. And I think sometimes those are just as great.
Well, it's like friends are the family that we choose.
Yes.
I think the only thing that you could be missing out on are the constant discussions that my sister and I have of what aspects of our mother are we now getting.
Yes. Yeah.
Fear of the senility is like, I'm getting these bright red under the skin bruises like my mother used to get.
Yeah.
Like, look, I'm doing the mom thing. And,
I still do them. I just have no one to compare them to. When I was in my maybe late 20s, early 30s, I was staying at my mom's house. So I was sleeping in my childhood bedroom, and I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I was sleeping with no clothes on. And I turned on the light, and for a minute I thought my mother was standing behind me. And I thought, oh my God, my mom has gone crazy, or she's sleepwalking. Here comes the senility, because we always fear that with our folks, right?
Yeah.
Why is she wandering around? Why is she standing behind me naked, not saying anything? And then I woke up a little bit and realized it was me.
Wow.
I was like, oh,
wow.
Yeah. So I have so much of her body things. So yes, I see it all the time. And sometimes I hear something come out of my mouth and I think, oh my God, I sound just like her.
I'm always sounding like mom. Unfortunately, I don't look like her. And, nobody was more sorry for that than our father, who would say to him, well, don't you think your daughters are pretty? And he'd be like, well,
Oh, yeah.
and he go, I just wish that one of you had looked like your mother.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, well, we both would say, we wish that too, Dad.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So let's
She
talk a
was a
little bit
beauty.
about animals. And no, first of all, while we're talking about your mom, let's do this. Let's talk about your mom is so your dad was Norwegian, right?
Yes.
And your mom was kind of a Celt mutt, like
Yes.
English,
British
Irish,
Isles
Scottish.
mutt. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about you have an ancestor who was actually hung during the Salem witch trials.
Yes. And I might also add that even on my mom's side, if you go back far enough, you get right back to Scandinavia. And my DNA test says that I'm 87% Scandinavian.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So don't get much wider. One DNA test said that there was some Iberian coast stuff, so it might have been Spanish or Arabic.
Okay. Sure.
But the later test revealed no, you're just completely white.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, it's funny. You and I both believe in genetic memory.
Yes.
And I did not grow up knowing that there was a witch in the family.
Oh, okay.
And I'll always recall the huge response I had to an episode of Bewitched when Samantha was in Salem.
Oh, yes,
and
right.
She forgot her powers and everything, and she was in the witch trials. And somehow or another, Endora, somebody, cast a spell on her, gave her back her memory, and she starts going after Cotton Mather and all the people that are in the courtroom and doing real magic and proving to them that the other people that they had captured were not really witches. And it had a huge effect on me. I would play pretend that I was in that episode. And I didn't know, I kind of vaguely knew, maybe at the point of being like 10 or 11, that somebody had been in the trials in the family. But it wasn't until I graduated high school and I looked into it a bit and realized, that, okay, there was a person who's hanged. And obviously she was not really a witch. But a cousin of mine wrote a novel based on our great grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And thanks to the miracle of the internet, I was able to look her up and find out more about her. And it really ticks me off that she's not one of the famous witches, because during the trials, she was accused of being the ringleader of all the witches. And if you're going to die for something, go all the way.
Yeah, she should have gotten billing above Tituba.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And
great-great-grandma was robbed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he called her the Queen of Hell.
Oh.
And so a lot of people then who were accused started pointing the finger at her. And so really during the trials, she was quite a big deal. And she insisted, she was very stubborn and kept insisting, it is crazy that you keep believing these people who are out of their wits. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But I often think that would be so like me, to just keep insisting that everybody else is wrong. And no, I'm not going to confess to something that isn't true.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have a lot of her in me, and
absolutely,
I keep feeling it more and more and more. And I just heard a story that proves genetic memory. That they did things with mice, and they taught the mice something, and their offspring knew what had been taught.
Well, how do cats know how to use the cat box? I always think about that. Isn't that genetic memory? Because when I was 23 when I got my first cat, 24. My mom had had a bad experience with a cat when she was growing up, so we always had dogs. We never had a cat. But Erin literally came in the house and wouldn't leave. And finally, my
Aw,
mom said, I think you just need to adopt this cat. She wants to live here.
she's already adopted you.
So we went to the pet store and we were all didn't know what to get, right? The guy had to show us you need a box, you need litter, you need a scoop, because we didn't know about any of that. You need litter liners. So we come back, we put the box in the kitchen, which we now know is not a good idea because wow,
No,
cats a
no,
lot. We
don't
put the
shit
box
where
in the
you
kitchen,
eat.
and my mom, being a teacher and a therapist, is making all these plans for how we're going to train Erin to use the box. And she starts talking, and Erin goes right in the box and goes. Now, she was a stray. She'd been on the street her whole life, but she knew just how to get in that box and go. And then last year, for the first time, earlier this year, my girlfriend and I fostered kittens, and I'd never done that before. I know you've done a lot of that. And they just know. I mean, you kind of have to show it to them, but they just know it like a few weeks old, how to go in there and just start scratching around. And I think that's genetic memory. I think it's
Hmm.
passed down
Well, I
from
mean, that's part of the instinct. Like they know to dig.
right.
You know, because really you can train them to use a box. What you do is you put them in the box and you take their little paws and you go scratchy
Yeah.
scratch and they go, oh, this is where I poop. Um, and sometimes that genetic memory, which is
Mhm.
instinct, which we're not so connected to, but I believe we still have it. It gets a little screwed up, like my cat Smokey. He knows that he's supposed to cover his poo or pee, but instead of covering it with litter, he's scraping at the wall, which obviously doesn't work. And
Right.
there's so many wall scrapers, and so it's like
Yeah.
there's this instinct, but it's just not quite right.
Yeah.
Like my female cat, when I was foster parenting, she decided that she loved this one kitten, and I'm on the phone with my friend going, I'm concerned, she's really obsessing over this kitten. And he's like, oh, she knows more about how to take care of those kittens than you do. And I'm thinking, no, because I'm watching her go up the stairs with the kitten in her mouth, banging his head into every stair as she goes up. I'm like, no, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's like a
Right.
little girl with a doll.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. I've never been around them that young. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about animal communication in a minute. So before we do that, I want to finish talking about your ancestor. If you don't mind me saying so, and take it from one who knows, there is something decidedly witchy about you. You
Oh,
have a
yeah.
lot of
I embrace it.
from making your own teas to, I mean, all the different things that you make and create, and you know what I mean? Your connection to
Yeah.
animals and to nature. And I mean, I think that's very much the essence of witchcraft. I think witchcraft has gotten kind of a bad rap, and people think that witchcraft is putting curses on people and
Yeah.
doing bad things. And certainly there are those who use it for bad, as there are people on earth that use anything you can think of. Somewhere there's a person using frosted flakes for evil. Like
Yeah,
anything you
sure.
can think of, somebody's doing it. But most people don't even know that they're using witchcraft. They think that they're alchemists or they're herbologists or they're homeopathic medicine people, but they're all basically doing what witches did. And just,
Yeah.
respecting the moon, respecting the sun, respecting the oceans, respecting the forest, raising plants. I mean, all of those things are extremely witchy. And I think you have so many of those elements.
Yeah, I'll agree. Even as a child, I would smell the seasons, and
Me too.
it would be like, oh, I'm getting this energy.
Uh-huh.
And then I started
Me
doing
too.
rituals. I had certain scents that I would use, or I mean, that's the essence of ritual. And I didn't
Yes.
really know what I was doing, but it was just a way of enjoying that connection to nature a little bit more. And whenever I felt like I was messed up or confused, I would start growing plants
Mm-hmm.
because it would get me back in touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I,
it's
and I,
very much like an earth mother thing. And then, of course, when I got older, I became very interested in the occult,
mm,
very interested in magic, and I did practice these things. But I always felt like, it's like a knife. You can use it to stab somebody. You can use it to spread butter, um,
absolutely. Yes.
and that none
Spread
of these
butter, my
things are
friends. Spread
evil.
butter.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I was doing astrological charts and going, "Whoa, oh man, this crap works,"
Yeah. Sure.
Um, and so, I don't believe that any of that stuff is evil, although I will say that there's that when you exert your will or your ego onto the forces of nature, you get some bad mojo.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
so
yeah.
magic really isn't a good idea.
No, because if you're not going to respect it, it's going to come back and it's going to slap you in the face 100 times worse. You have to
Well,
be
and
careful
also
what you do and
like,
with what intention.
well, and this was one of the great things of Jesus as a teacher. And don't worry, I'm not going to get religious because I don't even consider myself a Christian. But I think it might not have even been him, but there's thy will be done. And that
Yeah.
whole, better than I do. This is what I'd like, but I'm not going to try to will it to happen.
Right. Right.
I'm going to be open to it and accepting of any little nudges that I get that will lead me towards what I want. And sometimes what you think you want, isn't nearly as good as what the universe has planned.
Yeah. It's interesting because my girlfriend's daughter is in her first semester of college, and I call her my spirit daughter because I
Oh,
really believe she is the child of my soul.
that's
And
great.
so much like my mother. She even
Whoa.
she says things and I'm like, oh my God, that's like that came out of my mother's mouth. It's amazing. If you stood her next to my mother and said this is my mother's grandchild, nobody would say what. Like she totally looks like her even.
Wow.
But she's taking a class, she's a philosophy class in Eastern religion. So it's Eastern
Hmm.
philosophy. And I help her study and stuff because I'm loving being in college again. I think it's fantastic. I should sign up and go too. But she's learning about Taoism. And she just wrote a paper on Taoism that I read. And it's interesting how it's so much what I believe. And I've always thought that was my belief, one of my metaphysical beliefs, but you can totally see how the New Age world got a lot of their stuff from the
Oh,
Eastern
yeah.
world. But it's
Oh,
basically
yes,
about
yes.
the Tao, right? Is basically what I call spirit. It's the everything, the universe, right?
Mhm.
And the Tao will give you everything you need. All you have to do is you don't push your will on the Tao. You don't say, this is what I want. And if I don't get it, then I'm going to do something bad. You just live in the now and in the good and don't sweat the small stuff and wait for the Tao to bring into you what you need. And that has changed my life, that philosophy. I mean, I didn't start that like a couple nights ago with the child, but that philosophy of, because growing up as an actor, it was all about, knock that door down and get yourself what you want and make the life you want and don't take no for an answer. And I spent a lot of my early life until I was in my early 40s trying to kick doors down. And then I suddenly realized maybe that door is just not for me. And more over the last, I'll be 55 in 2 months, so 15 years, I've been practicing this idea of, hey, I meditate and manifest on what I want, and then I let spirit decide, well, this is a good thing for you, or that's not, or guess what? It's like the Stone song, right? You can't always get what you want, but you always get what you need. And it's true, but we as
Yeah.
people think we know everything because we think my mama used to say, just smart enough to be dangerous. That's what she used to say about people. We think we have everything all figured out. And the truth is, sometimes there's something wonderful and magical for us that we've never thought about. And
Right.
it's just there waiting, like my entire spiritual career now, that
Yeah.
feels like where I always belonged. And isn't it nice that sometimes when you stop chasing something, these wonderful things can just be given to you because you're not deciding that you know better. And I think that's such a great way to live. And I teach that in my interfaith services all the time about release and surrender and letting go so things can come in. But man, it was all in the Tao. I felt like I was a secret Taoist the whole time. I'm very excited now. It's become part of my spiritual palette. It's always fun to learn new things.
Well, I've always felt, especially now, I learned that lesson a little too much. And I'm like, okay, I'll just let whatever is meant to be will happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily doing the stuff that I need to do
Right.
to be ready for what happens.
That's right? You don't make things happen, but you make yourself ready for when it happens. And that goes back to my teaching as an actor that, in acting school, you learn about the actor's toolkit, right? You learn all the stuff, and you're an acting teacher, so you learn all the stuff you have to learn, right? You learn the physical stuff, you learn the timing, you learn the accents, and you put them all in your toolkit because you never know what's going to be dropped down into your life, and you have to be ready. And I think that is a wonderful sort of Zen philosophy for life. You build your toolkit and your skill sets of what you really want. And then you wait until the thing comes, and then there it is. And I find that everything in my life, and maybe you have found this too, everything in my life that I ever did, I used somewhere in my life. It was all for a reason.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the reason at the time.
Yeah, you'll get a puzzle piece and you don't really know where to put it, but next thing you know, you have another puzzle piece. It's like, oh, these two, put them together, they go here. Absolutely. And I've been saying that since I was in high school. But I'm lucky because, much like you, I was raised by somebody who was very spiritual and very intuitive.
Yeah.
And, everything was about the lessons. And that includes my grandmother as well. She was very spiritual and intuitive. But, I went through a huge disappointment when I was about 6 years old. My career wasn't going the way I wanted it to. I was up for a role in a show called Doctari, which, being Ellie Mae Clampett, being an animal lover, this show was supposed to take place in Africa.
Wow.
And it had Clarence the cross-eyed lion was a regular star of the show.
Oh,
it was about a veterinarian.
Big names. Yeah.
And there was, I think her name was Judy. Anyway, there's a chimpanzee. I mean, there were all these animals on the show. It was a veterinarian in Africa, and they were going to have him adopt a little girl. And I had the part, and I knew it. My mom was never good at keeping secrets. And I did my screen test, and at the very last minute, the star of the show said that he did not want me. He wanted this other girl who turned out to be Erin Moran from Happy Days.
Okay.
I was devastated, just devastated. Well, within a year, I got Brady Bunch.
Wow.
And my mother said to me, I'll never forget, we were in the car, we were going on Mulholland. And she said, if you had gotten Doctari, you never would have even auditioned for Brady Bunch.
It's true.
And isn't the Brady Bunch a better deal? And it turned out Doctari, that was the last season, because it was the old introduce a little kid to save the failing show.
Right.
Which it didn't save it. And apparently they filmed out here in Valencia.
It never saves it.
And it's just jumping the shark. So that didn't last anyway. And I hear it was miserable because it's so hot out here.
Yeah.
And so, the best thing did happen. And my mother had told me when I was praying for Doctari, she says, you have to say thy will be done.
Yeah, that's
you
beautiful.
Have to let
that's
it go.
Beautiful.
I can't let it go. I want to work with the lion, the cross-eyed lion. No, you have to let it go. And my grandmother told me that as well. So,
wow,
you're right.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's hard. My mom tried to instill that in me too, but I think it's hard when you're a kid. Because you get these ideas,
hard.
And because you think, but I deserve it. I was great. Why? But then you learn in life, it's not really about what you deserve, right? Because you oftentimes don't get something just because you're the most talented or you work the hardest, or sometimes stuff just happens. And that's not in the entertainment world, that's in every world. One interesting thing for me, having been in entertainment my whole life, about opening my spiritual practice 4 years ago, is that I now have clients that do all different things. So I'm so much more familiar with other kinds of life outside entertainment than I often was. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing anywhere you go. Every business has the cheaters and the stealers and the slimy
Yes.
people and the wonderful people, and it's all the same thing. And they people talk about how hard the entertainment business is, but honestly,
It's just like any
everything is
other.
hard. It's hard to
Well,
work at Amazon and try to work your way up the chain. It's
yeah,
hard to work
yeah.
anywhere.
And every business has their stars. I
Yes.
worked at a auto shop
Oh
for a little
wow.
while, and it was like I thought, okay, this little business, it has its stars,
Yeah.
it has its comedic relief.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Sure.
like a
It's
sitcom.
ne'er-do-wells. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It has the sleazy ones that are trying to get something that they're not earning, or to steal from the company. Yeah, and I always think it's so funny how so many people think that to be a child actor is, oh, you're being robbed of your childhood, and it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
abnormal. I'm sorry. Compare that to a child who does ice skating or gymnastics,
Sure. Oh God, or
or
ballet, God forbid.
yeah, yeah,
My
and
my
hell
my
have no
niece,
fury like a horse show mom.
oh my God, my niece is in ballet and she's just in it for fun. Like she's not trying to be a ballerina. And the teacher, last night I was
Oh,
listening to a little bit about what the teacher was saying to her because I was talking to my sister and my brother-in-law while she was getting out of ballet. And I was like, oh my God. What I wanted to go scream at the teacher. I became the angry aunt who wanted to go down and scream at the teacher.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's people put pressure on kids no matter what they're doing. And as adults, you have to learn to free yourself of that pressure so you're still not that scared, terrified person your entire life when you're, 50 or 60 or
Mm-hmm.
however old you are. I think that's so important. Be more like animals. My new motto in life, I have a 10-month-old Cullen. He's a
He's only
blue.
10 months old. My
He's 10 months old
gosh.
today. Happy birthday, Cullen.
Oh, wow.
He was born on Easter Sunday, April 4th. He's a magic little, I always would say he resurrected my soul on Easter. He's a magic little
Oh.
darling, although I didn't get him till 3 days later. But my new motto in life is be as happy every day as Cullen is. Because everything for Cullen is happiness and new adventure. And, he's like a kitty who's part puppy and part monkey and part fairy. Like everything is the fascination of it all. And
Oh.
why can't we be like that? You know what I mean? It's be
Mm-hmm.
more of a Tigger and less of an Eeyore. The world tries to
Mm-hmm.
make you an Eeyore, right? You have to stay a Tigger. And this little guy certainly is. And so I try to kind of remember that, like, well, should I sweat the small stuff? Look, Cullen's happy because he's eating one of my rose petals right now. Maybe I should go over and
Oh.
eat a rose petal and that'll be enough. I mean, it's the simple
They're
things.
edible.
So let's talk about animals because I mean, I know I introduced you as an animal communicator, but you really are. Like you've had psychic things
I
happen
guess.
with animals and have fostered hundreds of animals.
No, well, no, only 64. I did
Okay.
keep count.
Oh, okay.
But I've
64
been in the
kittens.
lives of hundreds,
Okay.
put it that way. Because
So,
even the animals that I visit at the sanctuary, and there's hundreds there. Um, but no, I personally hand raised 64 kittens.
wow.
Yeah, and some of them were only 3 days old.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yeah, they still have the stem. In fact,
Yeah.
Diablo was so fresh, but he didn't go to me right away. But his umbilical cord was still new.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah, that's like really scary. But my friend Gina took care of him. But anyway, yeah, I've been in the lives of lots of animals, and I was thinking about. I was writing an essay this morning because I have these essays that I want to put together into a memoir, but I'm lazy.
No, you
Um,
should.
I know I should. I just don't. Anyway, I was writing one,
okay.
and I found myself writing about the postpartum after having my son, and then I found myself writing, okay, call the loony bin. She's talking to her dog again, because I was remembering that my dog Cortez, who was my child,
Mm.
and uh, I was overwhelmed with at the time feeling like I was really screwed because I love this new child so much, and if anything were to happen to him, I mean, it's so frightening. So it's just this huge,
Yeah.
huge burden. And I'm sitting in the garage crying to myself, and my dog comes in. And then I look over at him, and I'm thinking in my head, and if you ever lay a paw on that little guy, and he's stopped me. And this, this makes me sound insane, but he said,
No, not at all.
he goes, no, Mom, I get it. He goes, I know, he's your child. And he goes, I've known all along. And kind of acknowledging that I had brought home a baby doll, brought home my son's blanket so he could get used to his scent, and, trying my very best to make sure that they would
Smart.
get along.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, look, I didn't think you were just getting fat. I've known that you had a baby inside you. And I'm like, oh, good. And I said, well, will you love him and protect him? And he's like, okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Well, I didn't say that.
And he said, I don't know how jealous I will be of him.
Yeah.
But I promise I will not hurt him.
Yeah.
And he never did. And then he didn't have any reason to be jealous, because much to my husband at the time's disappointment, he was told, oh, when she has a baby, her dog will just be a pet. He won't be her child anymore. Not true. Nope. I raised Michael and Cortez as siblings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then my dog was very grateful, and they got along just fine.
I told a girl at a slumber party when I was maybe 10 or 11 that my dogs were my brothers, because that's how my mom had raised me.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
The mother picked me up in the morning and took me to my mom's and knocked on the door. And my mom opened the door and she said, my mom had never met her. She said, I'm Dawn's mother. My mom was like, oh, hi. She said, your daughter spent the night at our house last night. And Sheena is telling people that her dogs are her brothers. And my mom took a beat. She was like, and that was it. I never got to go to that girl's house again. Is that hysterical? I was never invited back to her house. But when interesting enough, like your story, my mom had a dog named Bunky, a fox terrier, wire-haired fox terrier, and he was really her soulmate. And they had gotten through a lot of things together. And she was very much an animal communicator as well. And when she brought me home, he would try to knock me out of the crib. And I don't think he ever liked me. He was a very jealous little guy. And I think he tolerated me, but I don't think he ever liked me. And I think it's hard for them. It's funny because my girlfriend has 3 kids. And she said to me the other day, it's sweet you love Cullen like a person loves a human child. But I don't know the difference in humans and animals.
Exactly.
Because I believe that as we are reincarnated, we are men, we are women, we are animals, we're fish, we're single-celled amoebas. Like, we're all the same. To me, there's no difference in an animal and a person, in the same way that to me, there's no difference in a man and a woman. Like, everybody's energy is different. It just depends on where that particular being resonates. And
I always said this is as close to being a mother as I've gotten.
Right.
So don't judge it.
And I'm completely happy with it.
Child.
Right. And I love my niece and my nephew, who are my 2 best friends' kids. I love these 3 wonderful spirit children that I am blessed to have now. But, Cullen is still my child, and he's important, and he needs love, and he needs to be talked to. And it's interesting, though, animals are an easy read because they do talk to you about everything. He'll talk all the time.
As much as you listen.
As much as you listen.
They're like a book.
And he says,
as long as you read it.
Funny little things, he said. He's always been funny. The thing I wasn't prepared for, and you probably are an old hat at this, when they were little, so when they weren't really seeing and hearing. So we had a litter of 5. 4 were from the same litter, and Cullen was at a kill shelter, and they called us and asked him to take him at the last minute. He was 3 days old. They were going to euthanize him that day. And the only way they could make him stop crying was to put him in the basket with the 4 tabbies we were supposed to have. Aww. So he kind of came with the package. And the minute that Lynn swaddled him and put him in my arms, I said, there's no way I'm giving this kid up. I used to tease because, it was hard to rescue him. Cat rescues, there's all these cats with no homes, but they don't want to give you the rescue, especially if you're a foster, because they think if you take the rescue, you won't foster anymore. That doesn't make sense to me, but it's not my world. It's not my business. But I used to always say that if they weren't going to let us adopt him, that we were going to run to Tijuana and I was going to change his name to Juan Carlos. We were going to open a taco stand. Cullen was going to make the tortillas. I was going to get him a sombrero so no one knew we were on the lam, because there's just no way that I could have been separated from him.
That's so weird, because I was given incentive to adopt. It
No,
said we waive the fees if a foster parent adopts.
And fees were not waived. This was very different. We had to really petition, and they didn't want to give him
because
to us.
It's such a great way, and they're right. You might not come back and
but then at least the cat
again.
got adapted. I mean, isn't a cat anyway? That's a whole nother cat political thing.
I've told people that that's a great way to get a cat, is to join the foster program.
Absolutely.
And then you learn kind of, what you want. And I mean, Smokey, I've had Smokey since he was 4 weeks.
Okay.
And it was an easy foster litter because they were about ready to start solid food, and they started lapping when I got them. Geez, I was going to adopt one that I had that still had his umbilical cord, but he didn't get along with my other cats, so I didn't. But gosh, that's. But
interesting when they were so little, right? And they weren't really, because to me, when animals speak to me, they speak in English. I mean, I hear them just like a person talking.
Right, you do.
But when they were
you don't
real
hear
little,
actual words, but yeah.
Right. You feel feelings, you turn into words.
Yeah.
But when they were little, so Cullen was 3 days old and the others were 10 when we got them, 10 days old. It was almost like so nobody's eyes were open. The tabby's eyes were just starting. So Cullen had no eyes, no ears. It was almost like they pushed emotions at you. Do you know what I mean? Like you could feel they didn't really know how to put together thoughts.
Okay.
But they pushed their little feelings at you. So you could feel their feelings, but you couldn't really hear their thoughts. And I wonder when they're that young, maybe they don't think, they're just feeling. And maybe human babies are the same way.
Oh, no, they are, because I remember not having words for feelings. I remember remembering that when I got words. And now, it's hard to think without thinking in words, but I used to think without words.
Yeah.
And for me, like some cats, because I have the most experience with cats. Some cats, they're here. They're right there. You can feel them. You can hear them. They are there. They're another person.
Yeah.
And some, you go up to them and they're like white noise.
Mm-hmm.
And Kimberly.
Oh, Kimberly. But
Kimberly was always
special.
white noise.
Yeah.
And she wasn't very human-like.
Yeah. My cat Megan was like that too. She was very white noise. You didn't really pick anything up from her. You learned from her actions. Yeah. But you didn't psychically pick anything up from her. Yeah.
Smokey's a little like that, although now that it's just me and Smokey, he's becoming more of a friend and a roommate and somebody I'm getting to know better.
That's nice, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
I had said to my sister, it's so strange that Smokey's the one, because I started out with 5 cats. When I stopped foster parenting, I had 5 of my own. And I just, his brother was my soulmate cat, and he died of FIP. Don't vaccinate for FIP, people. Consult your veterinarian, but
he died from the vaccination of FIP?
Yes. And we've learned, I don't even think that they try to push it on people unless the cat is an outdoor cat.
Right. But if your cat does have FIP, do not get them near the other cats.
No.
Because they spread through the water dish.
Until because he was 9 before he developed it.
Wow.
Yeah, so you think you're out of the woods and everything's fine, and it's not. But he, he's like, I'm here. And I am here. He was like my lover. He used to do things that really freaked me out. He'd come up behind me when I was working, and he'd stand up and put his paws around me, but he could hug. And
Yeah.
he hugged, and I know Cullen does that.
Cullen's a hugger too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he would nibble on my ear,
Mm-hmm.
which when he was a little baby, he tried to suckle my ear, and but he'd do that just like as a reminder. I mean, he was so like, hey baby, he was the Continental.
Well, but
Yeah.
maybe, maybe in another life, who knows?
Yeah,
Who knows
but
why
his
they come,
brother-
when they come, and where they come. I mean,
Yeah.
it's your soul pod travels. And I've had a cat. Well, I thought it was two, but then Cullen, I believe, is the reincarnation of one of them, who were just my cats, and I didn't feel connected to them. It's interesting because
Mhm.
I had a cat named Liam, and he was kind of my trouble boy, right? He sprayed, he had horrible anxiety. Everyone wanted me to kill him. I think my ex tried to kill him a couple of times. And he was hard to get near because he had so many problems. And I always thought I didn't have a connection to him, and I always thought Seamus would come back. Seamus was my tabby, who I was so close to. And you remember that I tried to adopt from a friend of yours, another rescue, not the one you work for.
Uh-huh.
And she had a little blue boy, and I named him Cullen. And then he died of a heart problem before I ever got him.
Oh God! Wow.
He had like a congenital heart problem, and he died.
Wow! Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I was so devastated. So when
That
this
was
one
awful.
was put in my hands, I was like, oh, Cullen. It just named him Cullen. But I thought he was going to be Seamus. And it took about a month to realize he was Liam. He's so much like Liam. And the message he's really given me is that you never knew how much I loved you when I was Liam.
Oh.
And I feel bad because I didn't, because he was so much trouble. And I was always trying to, he was a sweet cat. He would never have hurt anyone. But I was always trying to manage all of his problems. This little guy has no problems. Like, he's just, when you have him from the time they're little like this,
fresh start.
he's golden. But so many things he does is just like Liam. And I used to call Liam Robin Hood because he would steal the cat treats out of the closet, and he would rip the bag open, and he'd give them to every other cat. At the time I had 4 cats. He'd deliver the treats to everyone. So the other night I was getting something out of the closet at Lynn's house, and she has a shepherd pit who has a lot of issues around food and treats and stuff. And she's kind of a little food FOMO. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting, and I had gotten some batteries out to replace a TV remote, and I'd left the door open, and I was just sitting on the bar stool replacing the remote. And he went in the closet, and he got the treat bag, and he didn't get his treat bag. He got Luna's treat bag, and he took it and he dropped the bag like right in front of her. And I thought, oh my God, you are so Liam. I've never met a cat that did that before. He wanted her to have her treats because, he's in contact with her, and that's how it is. We are now completely out of time, and I have so much. Will you come back and do this with me again? And where can people find you online?
Yes. Well, I just got kicked off Facebook yesterday. So don't find me there.
Instagram?
I'm on Getter.
Okay. I don't know what that is, but okay.
It's one of those Right. They won't censor you on Getter, but it tends to be kind of right wing, and an echo chamber, and not a lot of people there. So I can't really stir up.
You can do your thing and not get kicked off. You're wonderful, my friend. I love you dearly. Thank you for being here, and let's do this again soon.
Love you too.
Thank you. Always the wonderful Susan Olsen. Always a joy to have here. I'm Sheena Metal, and this is the Sheena Metal Experience. We're here every Friday at 3:00 Pacific time, coming to you live from Los Angeles. Remember, my friends, to seek peace, to live in love, to lead with kindness, to embrace unity, and to always raise your vibration. I love you all a lot, and I'll see you next week. Thank you, KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. I'm honored to be a part of your family. I'll see you next time, my friends.